we've talked over the summer about how it'd be great to actually get the audience involved here at Pivot to see if we could come to some conclusions and make some things happen in the market. And so that's what we're going to try and do next. And to lead that charge, we brought in Jeff Jarvis, who's going to come up here as a leader of a group of provocateurs. So we call this next section of the Pivot Provocation. And so everybody sit up and pay attention, because at any moment, Jeff might be standing in front of you with you to tell us what you think.
This is crazy space, eh? Come on out, guys. Come on out. So we're going to try to do this quickly, and we're going to try to get you to work. And I'm going to play Oprah or Phil, depending upon your generation, coming around, or Katie, to talk about measurement and how measurement is all fucked up, and how we're going to try to invent better measures today and figure out what should be measured to make business work and to make content work. All right? I'm going to be coming all around to you as we go about trying to hear what you need measured, what measurements work, what you want, what you don't have, and so on. We're going to start with provocations. These folks are told to lob grenades into your midst. So I want to have them introduce themselves, what they do very quickly, and they're going to give their provocative statement about measurement. Pedro.
It's Pedro LABOY. Can you hear me? Perfect. I'm with Tracx, and Tracx is a social enterprise platform that allows clients or brands to monetize, optimize, and manage their brands and their business. My statement that I want to make today, I travel a lot across the country, meet with a lot of brands. All I hear from brands is sentiment this, sentiment that, sentiment this, sentiment that. I got to tell you, I think sentiment is a meaningless metric. And for two reasons, because of the way it's computed and the way it's used.
Rick, quick question. Is it possible to be measured properly?
It's possible to me, yes, to measure properly, absolutely. But the other issue is the way it's used. A lot of people use sentiment as a substitute or a proxy for brand health, and it's not. You need to look at other metrics as well as sentiment.
Who wanted to go next? ULLA?
I'm going to do a slightly longer provocation.
Fine.
Hello. Hi, my name is ULLA ENGESTROM. I run a company called ThingLink. It's an interactive image platform that powers image engagement for brands and publishers. My provocation is this. Think about how many images you're posting to your website or social media per month. Think about if all those images contain a link to your premium content and become like a discovery platform. When you touch the image, your audience will be able to go back to whatever content is meaningful for them. There are little pop-ups, perhaps music video, whatever. It's a cute little idea, isn't it? But when you think of it, it's proposing a fundamentally new format to the web that previously had hyperlinked text, videos, which had hyperlinked images. It means that you can serve your web and the web on top of your images. From the measurement point of view, what does this mean? It means that suddenly you feel like you start playing this, like this online massive multiplayer game where you post, wherever you post images online, suddenly you're creating your own brand publisher network. You will start seeing how people on the different platforms touch your images. You'll see how they click through, what links they click through, how they share your content, what size are they embedding your content, and how is that image performing on those sites. That's a whole new point of view to the web. Now, what does this mean? Essentially, 4 things. First of all, you get a new tool in your hands, a new publishing platform that's flexible enough to merge native advertising and direct response. You get a new view to the web. You will know how your influencer network and their audience is actually performing, and you can reward them accordingly. You will know in more detail what part of your images is drawing attention. you will know what kind of link views on top of your image make people click. And fourthly, you will have a new tool in your hands to invite your brand advocates to create content for you and see how that content performs.
Great. And so now related, Apu also works with images, so why don't you provoke?
Hey, is this on? Maybe I'll grab one. Thanks. Hey, how's it going? Whoa, that's loud. Hey, how's it going? My name is Apu Gupta. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Curalate. Curalate helps brands become smarter marketers using imagery. So here's how I look at the world. Today, consumers increasingly want to communicate with brands using pictures rather than words. This is a concept that most brands still don't fully grasp. It's happening across networks, not just on any individual network. This isn't a Pinterest thing. This isn't an Instagram thing. This is a consumer thing. And when consumers speak visually, they lead the conversations. 80% of conversations, brand conversations on networks like Pinterest are led by the consumer. These consumers are telling you exactly what they want to talk about, what they want to read about, and what they want to purchase. And yet, as a brand, most brands continue to ignore what these consumers want to talk about and talk about themselves instead. Brands need to stop being ignorant. Consumers are telling you what they want to do. It's time that you start realizing it's not about you, it's about me and millions of people like me who are telling you what we want.
All right, so before we go to Tony, real quickly there, what's interesting about photos in both of your businesses is that it's not about measuring sites, it's about measuring an element that is embeddable now all across the web and watching the travel of that, yeah?
I actually think it's about more than that. It's about granularity. You know, before we used to worry about likes. I like this brand. Now it's about what I love about what that brand makes. I don't like the Gap. I love the Gap's sweater. I love the Gap's jeans. I love the Gap's belt. And that level of granularity has never existed. We have moved from networks about people and places to networks about things. And when we talk about things, we have specificity that we've never had before.
And I wanted to add that it's not only about measuring, but with interactive images, it's about multiplying the engagement. Because imagine, like, if image, like, the comparison is that the image is blank, it's empty, it doesn't have anything. But as soon as you add a piece of content on the top of that, that multiplies the engagement, and you can measure that. You can measure that in the time spent on the image, on the mouse overs, on the click-through rates.
All right, so now Tony, you at Chartbeat measure things pixel by moving pixel. Your provocation, please.
Hi there. Well, I didn't know this was happening, and they've actually given me more hair, which I'm hugely a fan of. Yeah, my name's Tony. I'm the CEO of Chartbeat. We work with about 80% of the top publishers. So pretty much every site that you go to, we're tracking your second-by-second behavior, but not in a scary way, I promise. And so I've been involved in this whole metrics business for quite a while now, and the thing that pisses me off the most is at the end of a quarter, when the VP of ad sales rushes down in a publisher and says, you know what, we've got this big brand campaign, but we're behind on our pacing. Someone bring out the slideshows. Someone get that slideshow of 50 top bikini bodies, and let's get this going. And this is a profoundly depressing thing for me. You know, because is this working for brands? Are they really paying more for someone just to click, 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 click? You know, it doesn't work for brands. It doesn't work for the user who's given a painful user experience. And it doesn't work for the publisher who's been creating quality all this time and then told that to really make money, they have to do this piece of shit at the end. Like, that sucks. And so I have a small provocation here, which is this. Brands want people's time and attention when they're doing brand advertising. I forget about direct response. For brand advertising, I want someone's time and attention. So let's measure that. I don't care how many pages. I care about lifetime exposure to that ad campaign. Because here's the thing with time. Exposed time, plus creative, these are the two things that really matter when it comes to ad recall or brand recall. The creative of the ad and how much time it spends in front of someone's face. Now, traditionally, this has been because time on site has always been, how you say, bullshit. But now we can understand. We can tell if someone's actually looking at the page We can tell what part of the page they're looking at. We can tell exactly how long they're doing that for. And with that, we have infinitely better data about whether a brand is actually connecting with its audience or not. So can we please stop measuring a metric where it takes zero marginal cost to create and doesn't actually speak to anyone's goals? Let's start thinking about time.
Bravo. How many of you, let's hear applause. How many of you think the page view is a dead bullshit measurement? How many of you think page views are still good as a measurement? Because why?
I don't think it's dead. It's still important. It's one of the indicators. It's not a total indicator.
It's what we have now, right? It's what we got. All right, what's good about page views? What's bad about page views?
Well, number one is it can be gamed very easily. It is off-brand. I'm not sure it's effective. I'm not sure it's really what we're about.
So what would be better? Let's start there. Any ideas? What do we want instead? Tony says time spent. Time spent.
To be clear, oh, Jeff, Mr. Jarvis, to be clear,
yes.
Traditional time spent isn't really worth much because you've got, okay, quick question. How many people here have more than one browser tab open at any one moment in time? Just out of interest. Okay. How many people here have ever gone to get a coffee and left the website thing open? Okay, there are some coffee drinkers here. How many people then think that traditional time on site might just be a little bit inaccurate? Okay, there we go. Right, what we care about here is not just time on site, but the amount of actively engaged time someone has spent looking at a page when the ad or the native content or whatever you're doing is in view. That's what matters.
Okay, over here.
Well, that's what I was going to say, time plus actual engagement. So if you can actually have something active for them to do, then you can measure if they're actively there or not.
Hal Varian, the chief economist at Google, tried to argue that newspapers online should get more people to spend more time on more pages, right? That's the old mass view of media. It's not about quality. It's not about relevance. It's not a higher order of measurement. Yes.
I think that if we're looking for one metric, I think we're missing out. I don't think there is one magic bullet or one metric. I think it's a whole... So I think you have to start with page views as early indicators of what's working and what's not, but I think you end at ROI. Are you making any dollars? And if you're not, you got to change it up.
So I'm with you on that. Here's the challenge to that, though. Just to be provocative. That's apparently why I'm here. Okay, so if we're gonna do this, and you're absolutely right that it can't be just one metric. Amount of exposure has been a pretty good measure for TV over the years. But starting with page views is the worst possible metric to be starting with because it's meaningless.
All right, hold on.
I don't know if it's totally meaningless. I think a page view gives you early indicator. I don't think it gives you lots of value, but it's...
Okay, but you said to start with page views and with ROI.
Okay.
You left out everything in between. What's in between? That's what we're trying to get to today.
And let's talk about ROI for a second here as well. Oh, come on, you told me to be provocative, dude.
I think there's a whole bunch of things, and that includes first-time purchase. I think it includes repeat purchase. It includes loyalty.
Okay, but you're still fine. You're at the ROI end. You're not at the media end of how are you measuring the impact of what people are doing online. Go ahead.
And here's the basic challenge. For the last 18 years or so, we've been selling brand campaigns using direct response metrics to try and judge them. Okay? So yes, I'm 100% for ROI. You know what? It's why we're all here, and it'd be very, very hard for anyone to say that ROI is a bad thing. That's dumb. It's great. But trying to use things like click-through rate on a brand campaign for a Tiffany's ad, that's ridiculous. And we know it. We see these vanishingly small click-through rates coming through, and we're still trying to pretend that there's something real, but they're just not. So let's talk. Oh, yes, please.
Sorry. I just want to say that if you are looking for what people are doing online and you're looking on your website, you're looking in the wrong place. Because I don't think much is taking place on your website. The decisions are being made somewhere else. The influence is being taken place somewhere else. The information is being gathered somewhere else. If you want to know what people are doing, at what they're thinking and what their intentions are, you need to be looking outside your website.
Such as? Where?
Such as social platforms, such as Facebook, Twitter, blogs, websites, but not your websites, like Amazon or eBay, the comments that are taking place, how people are exchanging information. That's what you need to be looking, and that's the kind of things that you need to be measuring. Because by the time people get to your website, it's a little bit too late. If you're thinking about conversions or page views, I mean,
right, well,
1995?
I think what you're both saying to some extent, I think, is that what's wrong here is that it's about, we make measurement about us, about media. When in fact, measurement should be about people, about relationships, about what we know about them. Right. Google understands that this is a signal generator about people that tells Google about us to give us relevance back, and that relationship data is where the value is. People, start putting your hands up and arguing, please, all right?
But I want to say one thing, like, I think that page views are important when they are presented in the context of, for example, image views or link views or click-throughs, because then you get an idea. If you see a high-performing website, but very low-performing image, or on the contrary, use a like low-performing website, but this image is performing really well. So it's interesting information for you. You want to take a look at it. You know, what's the context where the image is served. So I think page views and click-through rates are important, because then you're able to compare how you're showing initial state of data.
Fine, but we already have those things. Let's invent the new things. Let's invent what comes next.
Well, for example, I'm just saying that link views is an important new measurement data, because link views on top of an image, you can, for example, you can totally track the number of link views to a better conversion rate. It's a micro view of data. It's a new measurement.
Okay, back.
Hi, I'm just curious, since we're talking about measurement, my trade is SEO, and a lot of SEOs have been upset by the recent decision by Google to encrypt search data, and we can no longer get access to keywords the way we used to. Do you think that this is going to impact SEO or measurement, or the way that marketers are measured in the future, without this obsession of keywords?
Anybody want to defend SEO?
Well, I would say one of the things you need to worry about that's even larger than that is what happens if people start using a lot fewer words. Because what's happening, today what's happening is people are starting to communicate visually. When they do, they're using almost no words. When you pin something to Pinterest, what do you say? I love this? How are you going to SEO that? How are you going to do anything with this as the whole world starts to speak in a more visual tone? So, I mean, the whole notion of SEO is changing, right? Not just what the platform, not just what the engines are doing to make your life harder, but what consumers are actually doing in terms of their behaviors.
Over here.
To the, sorry, over here. To the SEO practitioner, I think the interesting thing is that Google still let you have the words if you'll pay. And through Google Analytics, you still can get the words, you just need the tool to get it. To the provocateurs, I think the issue is twofold. The first is, somewhere along the way, some idiot said that social media was free, and then some idiots thought that, oh boy, I'm going to get the reach of TV. The issue that we face as social marketers is massive scalability and repeatability, and then you get the wankers in the audience that think a dancing chicken equals sales.
I have nothing to say to that.
Then fine, we go on next. Over here.
What about
I guess I was going to pull this conversation back up and relate it to what we were talking about earlier, where we were talking about creating, at the beginning of the session, a more integrated and full look at, a holistic look at how social media is used across the entire consumer experience, and maybe bringing our level of metrics up to that. So instead of looking at page views, or even time spent on a particular object on a page, relating back that into the entire consumer experience. Like, how can we get those measurements and find that type of ROI?
So it's kind of interesting in that, so a couple of things. One, I feel like it's often, whether it's social shares or retweets or anything like that, it's like almost like the modern version of the click-through rate in some ways, in that it's an explicit behavior. It's not something that's passively had. It's like someone has chosen to do that, and that's kind of interesting. But it doesn't speak to that implicit behavior beneath. But the really interesting thing for me was, so we did a study with this guy called Farhad Manjoo on Slate a little while ago, and what we found was that the correlation between explicit behavior, between shares, and with actual people who actually read the entire thing, was almost nothing. It was like 0.1. So what you found was articles that were being read the most were being shared the least. So you've got these two...
Why do you think that is, Tony? What does that tell you?
Dude, because I think a lot of people click on a link and then immediately share it. I think a lot of people will retweet a link without even looking at it. But that is me going beyond the data to infer. And I'm always very careful about doing that.
It's not read by whom? The sharer or the sharee?
So say again?
Who is it not read by? The person who's sharing or the person who's getting the share?
Unfortunately, it seems like, and I said I don't want to go beyond the data here. It seems like a lot of people are sharing stuff without reading it.
So is sharing spam?
It's shocking.
Are you saying sharing is spam?
I'm not saying sharing is spam. I'm saying that's trying to be provocative just for the hell of it, Mr. Jarvis.
Yes.
Shame on you.
Guilty. All right. Let's come here.
What I'm saying is that when looking at the data, there is not a clear relation between the stories that are read most and the stories that are shared most. And so the inference there is that people who are sharing are doing so maybe without reading the whole thing.
So the most emailed list that New York Times staffers die to be on may be meaningless. Over here.
I think the conversation is a little too narrow. We have to look at profit, nonprofit, government, military, education. We have to look at support. We have to look at community and building community or how-to sites. So I'm trying to picture out how I work. I have two things. I have an interest in content and I have an interest in my intent. I might leave a page view open for 3 days. The reason I've left it up for 3 days is my intent has not been solved. I might be looking for pieces of data, so I think that the page view is integral if it's part of a sequential series of actions. So I'll look at something today, look at something tomorrow. I'm looking for answers. When I'm done, I might not buy anything, but I might be satisfied and my intent is solved.
So if I'm a marketer then, this is what I want to do. I want to know that you opened up that page at that point, then that you buggered off for 3 days. For some reason we didn't capture your attention, and then you came back and you maybe found the thing that you didn't.
No.
That's what I want to find out.
Maybe when I got to that page, I said, let me think about that. Or maybe it's because my son came to me and said, Dad, would you like to play basketball? Or maybe there was something else that came up that wasn't in that series, and I'm working on it.
I just don't want to be able to tell someone you were looking at it for 3 days.
You don't have to tell anybody, follow my sequential series, because if I come back and pick up that track again, if I in 2 days start following that sequence, and I find that answer, that's what we're looking for.
How should we value the ads on that page?
Wait. Let me jump in here and agree with the gentleman over here in the audience. I think that you need to be looking at 3 things. You need to be looking at engagement. I say 4. Engagement, sharing, influence, and intent. And those are the new measures you need to be looking at.
I was so worried you were going to do a Rick Perry thing there.
I love him already, so I don't know what your problem is. I think the intent is part of it. I even think
it is, and you can measure intent, by the way. You can measure people's intent to purchase a product or purchase a good. The sharing is not volume. The sharing is not volume. It's not how hard do you yell, how many people you tell. I might find something in that series of intents where I share it with one person. It's the CEO of Maersk. He needs to know it, and he influences X amount of people.
So, and I think that goes back to the idea.
I think that's
about
great.
Relationships and knowing people as people and not seeing this as friggin' eyeballs. Let me go back here.
Hi. So let's say hypothetically that we figure out what the magic metrics are to measure people's intent and conversions and all of that. As a user, as we all like to call normal people, and I'm spending a lot of time reading things and shopping, what do I get back out of that? Because right now, if I want to buy a pair of shoes and I put it in a shopping cart, I see those shoes everywhere. But everywhere else on the web, I'm still having a really disjointed experience without anything else being tailored to me but the advertising. So how's that going to change?
So here's one thing I would say about this, and this is why I care so much about the idea of time in some ways, or be able to capture people's time, is that it doesn't just have a good relationship to brands who actually get to buy what they want, time and attention. It's not just good for publishers who can for the first time link the quality of a piece with the value of that piece. But for users, when you start valuing people's time, then anything that gets in the way of them spending that time with you is unnecessary friction. So every bad design decision that's been created on the web by shitty metrics, every link bait article, every slideshow, everything where you've been frustrated, when the job is to remove all friction from your life so that you will spend as much time as possible on that site, then we get great design.
Hold on. The problem is, if you think it's
I'm taking your microphone away, by the way. Yeah.
If you think it's about time,
But no, may I say something? I want to say that it's not hypothetical, and actually, if you see me after the conference, I will tell you what kind of things you need to be measuring.
Tony, time. I'll give you one in a minute. After I'm done with it. All right. So here, buddy. The problem with time is that it's an old mass media inefficient way. So, Pointer said last week that, oh my God, young people spend less time in the news, thus the news is less valuable. No, young people are more efficient with the news. They get what they want faster. Time is often the case of being old and farty and sitting there on the couch watching an hour of stupid TV, getting 5 minutes of actual information. So time is not always the right information, relevance is.
Okay. So, Professor Jeff Jarvis, I love you, but bullshit. What you've been talking about, you've been talking about this for a while, you've been writing about this and HAILE variant and all these things, and what you are conflating, if not confusing, is the idea of targeting and providing relevant context to a particular person, and then how you measure the value of that thing afterwards. Okay, so yes, absolutely, I want to target, I want to find the most relevant possible thing for the most relevant possible person, and get that. But once I've delivered that, how do I know if I'm doing with brand advertising if I delivered what I was supposed to? It's not a click-through rate, dude.
So that goes back to what was said here. It's a process, and you've got to measure each process different. Ulu, you've been trying to get in.
No, I was just saying that also measuring has been something that brands and advertisers do. Now consumers will have a new set of metrics in their hands. If you're a fashion blogger, you're providing interesting content, you have new tools to measure the content that you're creating, and also a new grounds for negotiating a different kind of rewarding system with brands for the top content that you're creating.
One other thing I want to add here, we've essentially talked about metrics around the sort of the pre-purchase part of the funnel, the actual I'm about to buy kind of piece. I think one of the things that we frequently ignore is post-purchase, and I think a
relationship,
metric,
right? Relationship.
It's about celebration,
yes.
right? It's
yes.
about the fact that we spend so much time trying to get somebody here, sell them some piece of shit, target them all over the fucking web, and then when we're all said and done with it, it's like peace out. And what the fuck? Why are we doing that? Why don't we do something more with these people? And you would never do that with in any sort of normal context, but we do it all the damn time online, and we can do something about that. There are ways to measure.
So you start to measure. So the engagement becomes with the product, with the brand, with maybe even moving the customer earlier up the chain so they can be part of the design process even.
Right,
that would be true engagement.
But there's also the after the chain part. They're done purchasing. They've now owned this piece of whatever. Yeah.
So I just want to throw in this point that I think I deal with educational material, so sometimes terribly small numbers, it doesn't really matter. 78 page views is enough because it was paid for by a funder who wants to know how many kids downloaded this thing or whatever. But the other point I want to make is that as the ever-increasing complexity of what we want to know about these people, I think we just have to fucking ask them. I mean, you can't do analytics to determine, maybe you can. I'm suggesting that you could find a statistically valuable number of people, 1 out of 100, 5 out of 100, whatever it is, and then you call them and you ask them, what did you do after you bought it? Or you go look at their Twitter stream, or whatever it is. But you
know what? No, I think what I was saying too is that that's the old focus group way of asking someone randomly, do you have a concern about this product? Oh, you actually like some soda to go in the focus group. You really have no opinion. You're going to make one up right now. What do you think of Coke?
You just said that because I'm fat, didn't you?
Now we're getting to attitude. Right? So the problem is, what you see online is people who actually give a shit enough about the product to say something about it, good or bad, engaged either way. And I'm so delighted that I've ruined the language of the room. You want to join back in?
I'm sorry. Most people don't feel strongly enough to comment.
True, but those who do are worth listening to. I caused something called Dell Hell accidentally because I just said Dell sucks one day, right? And they didn't listen to me, and it wasn't me who was important. It was the 1,000 people behind me with pitchforks and lanterns ready to storm the castle, right? So it was a sentiment that was worth listening to.
I will take that on. I mean, I think you're absolutely right. This old methods of doing surveys, of doing research is just out the window. They're highly inaccurate. There's a lot of bias with them. I give you an example. We ran a brand study for a luxury car company. And the previous brand study, they had a focus group with 40, 50, 60 people. We did a study. We reached out to, or we gathered conversations. I think it was about 50 million pieces of content from 6 million people online. How can you match that to a focus group of 60 people? I mean, our method, our approach is way more.
Out of that, did you get any sentiment?
What's that?
Did you get any sentiment?
We rarely use a sentiment. It's just one of the small measures that we use because sentiment tends to be very inaccurate. It doesn't matter if there's negative sentiment, let's say on Obamacare, if the sentiment is the and it doesn't matter if 3 people have negative sentiment on your brand if they don't buy your product anyway. And it doesn't matter if Tony has a negative sentiment on a brand if he has no influence. But he does have a lot of influence. So it does matter. So there's a lot of things that you need to take into account when you look at metrics like sentiment.
Hi, I'm Paul Mooney. The only metrics that matter are sales. All these other things are made up by agencies, which are essentially middlemen that we do not need.
It's really nice to say that. It's adorable to say that.
It's spot on.
Take the mic away. You know what? It's the easiest thing in the way. So you know
We
what?
don't need you.
The only thing that matters is revenue.
We don't need you.
And of course it's true.
You don't make anything.
You're not being adorable now, Paul.
You don't produce anything.
I know. Well, I'm the CEO, so I literally produce nothing. So, I mean, that's just the nature of my position. But here's the point, like, how are you going to judge this stuff? If you're going to wait and say, okay, you know what, I'm purely going to do it on sales, and these guys will have no useful data on this, I'm zero. Are you being a ballerina right now? This is...
He loves
okay.
you.
I like you.
Heart.
Okay, we're back here.
So I think going back to the gentleman's point over there, it depends on the brand. Every brand has to decide what measurements are important to them. Maybe page views aren't important. I don't sell anything, so sales aren't important to me. But intent is, desire, likelihood, all of those things are important. How do you measure those?
Well, what do you do?
I am in tourism marketing.
So that isn't purchase. I mean, it's not purchased through you, but you're trying to entice purchase, aren't you?
Eventually, but I don't have a book direct. I'm just information source.
So how do you measure your own success?
That's a good question.
How does she measure her success?
We actually work with a lot of tourism bureaus, and it's really interesting because a lot of this it goes into intent and really to a larger point about aspiration, right? How do I tap into the desires that people are expressing, the affinity? You know, it's I think a lot of brands are still so focused on awareness. How do I get known? But it's not about just getting known, it's about getting loved, right? It's actually about developing that affinity. And those metrics are actually available. It comes to things around how much are people actually engaging with your content? How much are they spreading your content around? How much are they then in what ways are they commenting on it? And then after they go to wherever, whatever region you represent, what are they then doing post visit or during their visit to then add to that whole flow? And there's a lot that can be done around that, and that's what we're seeing a lot of tourism groups, doing online.
And a very simple way to measure intent for shopping, for example, is like a lot of fashion companies when they tag the different items on the image, a hover specifically measures the intention, interest and intention. And then when you can see what's the ratio, who actually follow through, who actually click through, it's a pretty powerful, simple metrics that you can measure intention with.
I'd like to shift a little bit here and ask whether there's anything that should be studied by companies or universities or measurement companies. What's not being examined today that you all would like to see some of them examine? Anybody? Oh, all right, hold on. I think I'm going to call OSHA on this place. Is it you? Yeah.
Hi, I think everything we're talking about is about measuring activity, and there's a tremendous amount of activity measurement going on, but no one's talking about measuring value. And we talk to customers, what they want is, what is the value of your media channel relative to other media channels? right? In other words, what's a tweet worth? What's a comment worth? What's a blog worth against the size of the audience being reached? Right? So how do we tackle that? Because all the conversation around activity is sort of, we've been doing that for years. I work for Social Chorus. It's a social marketing.
Right, so let me understand the question first, and then we're going to put it to our brains up there. You want to know the value of a tweet so you can charge for it, or what? What is you trying to measure?
More than anything, big advertisers are locked into the past, and they want to know what the value is that they're buying, right? I think the problem we have as an industry is we don't have any standard values or standard measurements around this. So when we're out selling media, we're at a complete disadvantage. And at the same time, we have Facebook and Nielsen out there convincing the world that it's about impressions, which is absolute bullshit. Applause, round of applause, please.
So, how do we measure value? Oh, now you're quiet.
The value of what?
You got cut off. The value of the media.
The value of what media?
Twitter, Facebook, etc.
The value to the brand? I mean, I think it goes back to the gentleman here. How many sales can you generate through those channels? Simple as that. That's how you measure the value. Are you measuring customer lifetime value? Is that the way you measure value? Are you measure sales? So different ways of measuring value. Are you talking about monetary value? Are you talking about another kind of value?
I would start with the basics before shooting for the stars. So what is the value of the content being created, the reach and frequency, so that we can get on a standard, on parity, and have conversations with big brands who are spending money and wondering what is the value delivered relative to print, radio, TV, Facebook, etc.
Close the loop. You got to close the loop. Well, how is that content driving sales? How is it driving revenue? Close the loop, and then you can demonstrate the value.
I also think that I think that just purely placing a value on an individual social action, I pin something, I Instagram something, whatever it is, and putting that's worth $1 or whatever it is, I think it creates the wrong incentives. It's like, hey, let me just get a bunch of people to go pin a bunch of stuff. Well, okay, that's
okay, right. Everything can be gamed. Let me stay here one more second. But is the problem that you go to a CFO, and the CFO says, I'm not buying that newfangled shit. I'm going to keep on buying good old-fashioned impressions. Is that the problem?
Yeah, I think so. We're all talking about the activity, and the natural question is, what is the value of the activity? And you can get into like, well, all that stuff can be gamed, etc. But the industry doesn't have a baseline, and it causes us tremendous issues in this space, particularly when there are 300 different companies running around selling stuff that all sounds the same, and yet there is no standard measurement to determine the value of what's being delivered.
But part of the problem is that the industry is still looking at these activities within the social sphere or the media sphere only, and that the information that is actually being produced goes well beyond those parts of the functional organization. If you can actually start to bring social to the table, you can actually start leveraging these cues across the organization. The value is actually quite far-reaching. The problem isn't assigning value to the tweet or whatever it is. It's the organizations themselves having such dogmatic silos that they don't share information that actually moves the needle.
Okay, back here. I see you, ma'am. I see you. I see you.
Hi, Lauren Kozak, Los Angeles Times. I am wondering how this all changes when you're talking about pure media. No e-commerce, no store, no retail, when it's just, I mean, we talk about page views, and you can't ignore that when it comes to news and other media. So how would you change everything you're saying when there's no retail or e-commerce in the picture at all?
I don't have a microwave, so I'm here.
But in the meanwhile, what I can say is that at least it's a way to measure how people are, how they find your content, and how they engage with your content. It's a new, like, people have new ways to share your content that they couldn't do before. Like, previously you were sharing the destination, links to destination, or spreading on social media. Now today what you can do is that you can spread the content in the original format, even editorial content, across the web, and still get people engaged with your content as if they were on your page. So I think it's a fundamentally interesting way for any content creator to measure how people are understanding and what they're interested in.
So when it comes to pure media, which is my favorite kind of media, there's a few things. We've done a series of studies. We did about 4,000 people in these lab studies, and we controlled for position, layout, format, everything that kind of pure media cares about in these contexts. And we found a couple of things. The only things that made any difference whatsoever were the ad creative. Ad creative actually matters, it turns out. And then also the amount of time that the person was exposed to that thing. So if you're exposed for about 5 seconds, you get one level, but if you're exposed for 20 seconds, you get about 30% more chance of recall. And so the real question for us, and this comes back to the value thing in some ways for me, is in a way it would be so much easier for all of our lives if we lived in a purely direct response world. If every ad was clicked through and then it was purchased, it would be so much easier. But apparently simply getting in front of someone's face and communicating your message is actually really powerful. And so we have brand advertising. And we need to find ways to measure brand advertising. So for that person from the, was it Los Angeles Times, was it? Ooh. Los Angeles Times. Here's what I would say. When you start caring about the amount of exposed time, the level of exposure you have with a particular person, more than the number of pages, the more clicks you can generate, here's what happens. 1, you're directly speaking to what brands want, which is greater brand recall for their messages. 2, instead of you being asked to write shitty stuff, shitty page view bait, you're saying, your editors are saying, you know what? You need to hold people for longer. You need to write the best quality content because that holds people for longer. And that means the value that page derives is intimately connected to the quality of what you write. That's a powerful thing for pure media on both sides of the equation.
All right, here.
I've been on both sides of the aisle where ESPN has said, how much is the value of a tweet? And literally are giving away social media as if it has no value at all because they can't put a value to it. And then I've been on the other side where a client, Shaquille O'Neal, had been offered $30,000 for a single tweet. We literally need to come up with some kind of value measurement to it, or someone else will, or it will be no value whatsoever in terms of the brand.
So the value isn't the tweet, obviously, right? The value is some measure of authority and reach and those kinds of things behind it, no?
Absolutely. If you have 7 million followers and he tweets once about that, to those 7 million followers, they'll pay him X. And that's the same as him getting an endorsement contract, being on TV or being in an advertisement. He needs to get some value out of it, and someone's willing to pay him for it.
Of course.
Actually, I have a point on this because we've been able to run a study that demonstrates the value of a tweet in actual sales. So this is for a big brand, and there was a big event around the brand. And we were able to run a study and demonstrate there were X amount of millions of dollars in sales tied to the actual tweet. So it's possible to demonstrate the value of a tweet if you have the right data and you have the right technology.
But hell, we don't even know how many tweets are actually read, right? We know followers, but we don't even have that because we're not allowed into the vault.
Potentially issue here is attribution. And I think your point on pure media is right. If you look at e-commerce sales on a last touch basis, 50% is from search, the majority being PPC. Less than 1% on a last touch basis of e-commerce, it's 0.8%, is from social sites. So this group needs to come up with attribution because social works, we just can't attribute it.
Yes. Someone over here has been very patient, and so be patient with me as I break my leg.
Let me ask, what you said, that isn't it always about closing the loop? Isn't the value always connected to that? I don't missing something really essential here. It's a matter of you then deciding what is the response that you're looking for. It's not always sales, but something else. But isn't it always about connecting the loop? How can there be a value otherwise? I don't on tweet.
All right, over here.
So hi, I'm a young professional from St. Lawrence College in Canada. And I just want to let you know, everything will always come back to money.
There is no reason any business is ever going to invest in social media or online if it's not going to bring them money in the end. And there is value, and they know the value. Facebook alone knows that one like on their Facebook page is going to get them $136 more per customer. That's because they've already dedicated themselves to liking that page. They are now always going to see your content in their newsfeed. So no matter what you post, no matter whether they're clicking on it or not, they know that you're seeing it. They have that exposure. So yes, like, we have the value and we need to know the value. But it's communicating that to the businesses that it's actually going to make it matter. If it doesn't make money, it's not going to make sense. So we have to make it sense by putting that dollar value on it.
Anybody? All right, let's wrap up. I'm disappointed. We haven't come up with new measurements, I don't think, really. We've hit a few things. What we're really trying to replace is the magnificent myth of old media, mass media, which is that all readers see all ads, so we charge all advertisers for all readers, right? It was beautiful while it lasted. And it was always bullshit. It was relative bullshit, but it was bullshit. And now that that's gone, I don't think we've gotten much of anywhere yet in trying to determine new measures of value. So I want to do a lightning round at the end. I still want to hear you say, what new things should we be measuring? Pedro.
Again, share, engagement, influence, and intent. And by intent, I mean purchase intent.
Intent, aspiration, and celebration.
Intent, aspiration, okay, celebration. Okay, good.
I think it's still unbelievable that how many images are out there and we don't know who is touching them and why and what part of them. So I certainly say hovers, link views is the most interesting emerging metrics.
Tony, you get the last word.
Unaccustomed as I am to public speaking. So, page views. Yes, page views are the key. It's going to be a bunch of metrics. We know that it's going to be a bunch of. It's not going to be any one metric. But here's the thing: we've got to stop measuring bad metrics that hurt us. And for me, as a starting point, if I'm doing a brand campaign, understanding how long my ad is spending in front of someone's face when they're actually looking at it, that's a good start. So that's what I'll kick off with versus just 10 million page views.
All right, you are the panel, so I want you to thank yourselves.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for a short break. We will